Thank you so much for remaining after what I know was a very invigorating and interesting presentation by Dr. Weed. And I would like to thank John Mayer, the registrar, who came up with the speaker suggestion and then sought her out. And so thank you, John. Kudos to you for that. Obviously, a very topical and timely speaker. I don't know the last time I saw this many people at an AGM. Anyway, I would like to call the annual general meeting of the BC College of Social Workers for the year 2015 to order. Before proceeding, I would like to acknowledge that we are present and taking place this meeting on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish, the Musqueam, and the Okanagan peoples. And so the way that the meeting will take place is that I will introduce our committee chairs, and then the committee chairs will come up and present their reports. There will be some slides that will accompany those reports, and there will be an opportunity at the end to have some questions. And we will also be live streamed. And so I want to say thank you and welcome to those of you who are watching wherever you are in British Columbia, hopefully none of my colleagues. So the next thing is to establish quorum. The college bylaws establish quorum at 21, and I'm going to say that we barely made it, but looks pretty good. So I'm going to proceed on the basis that we do have quorum. So the next item on our agenda is to approve the agenda, which some of you have a hard copy, and there it is in front of you. I would seek a motion from one of the registrants to approve the agenda. Thank you. Leanne Harder. Thank you, Leanne. I will assume that everyone's in favor of the agenda. Are there any questions about the agenda? Hearing none. So the next item of our business is the minutes from the previous AGM, which were made available. Do you want me to click on this link, John?
If somebody wants you to, or you want to.
I'm afraid that all heck is going to break loose on this computer if I do. But anyway, we did send you the minutes from last year's AGM, and the way it works under the college bylaws is that ordinarily you would think, well, we would approve those meeting minutes here, but the way it's set up under the bylaws is that the board approves the AGM minutes at the next meeting of the board. So the AGM minutes for last year were approved in the June 2015 meeting of the board. Oh, there's Gary Mavis. Hello. So the next item, it's me, but it's not really me, because I'm actually an oddity of the way we are structured is that we present the previous year that ends in December 31st in the spring of the next year. And this is the first time that the college board has not had a very recognizable name and face up here, and that is Elizabeth Jones, who has served as the chair of the BC College of Social Workers for the past 6 years. And I would like to thank Elizabeth for her dedicated service to the college and for so ably chairing these meetings and for steering us on the board and at the college these past 6 years. For those of you who don't know, the bylaws permit registered social workers to serve for a maximum of 3 two-year terms. So at the end of December of this year, Liz was left the board because of the way that the bylaws are structured. And as I say, I'm here for a short time as your chair because I'm in my 6th year on the college board, and so this is my first year as chair and last year on the board, so you won't have to put up with me long. And again, the members of the board for 2015 appear appear before you. I was the vice chair last year, and Renee Avitan was a member of the board and has left the board. Susan Barr, who's with us, remains on the board. Emma Gauvin is still with us on the board. And John Schmeyers was with the board of the college and had made the decision to leave the board. And Professor Jackie Stokes is a continuing board member. Those are the registrants from 2015, and then public members. The bylaws require that the college have 8 registered social workers and 4 publicly appointed members of the board. Doris Davisi remains a public member on the board, as does Colleen Spear, and the other 2 public members for 2015 have since left the board. Bruce Halser, who served on the Board of Registration and the college's boards for something like 11 years, it seems, longest serving member. And then Leonard Ibbs was also a public member who left the board in December. I've gone too far, John.
No, that's it.
That's it?
Unless you want to talk more, go back one slide.
Yes, I'm going to go back one slide. Except I don't know how to do that, John. You're going to see. I need my notes because I'm really presenting Liz's report. So what I wanted to present was just some highlights from 2015 that were identified by Liz. And those include the fact that in 2015, in I believe February, we held what we have now been doing every other year. In the early part of every year, we either have a strategic planning session, which we do every second year, or we do a board training. And so last year in February, we did regulatory training and board operational training with Eli Mina, and that was an all-day session that was very, very helpful to the board in governance issues related to serving on the board. Last year was also the second year that we had imposed the required 40 hours of professional development reporting. And we certainly heard from registrants in the first year, and all of that feedback was very helpful and positive. And what we heard in the last year, our second, was that the process was much smoother for registrants, and we hope it continues to be, and that it is seen not as a burden but as an opportunity to continue our professional growth. Yeah, I've already mentioned that we had a lot of transition from the board. We've also had a lot of transition in our staff. We still have John and Chelsea, and but we have a number of new staff members, and I'd like to welcome them and thank them. Nicole Abram left the college's staff last year. She was the coordinator of registration. And Mackin Shergill was one of our directors of professional practice, and he also left, as did Christine Young, our office coordinator. Those folks were replaced by Hoon Kim, Selena Bateman, and our newest hire, Nigel Mojica. And I'd like to thank them and welcome them to the college and hope that we will see them for a number of years to come. The other thing, yes, indeed. And the last thing I'd like to say as board chair is that we at the college greatly benefit from the advice and wisdom of our MCFD liaison, and that is Ms. Leah Bailey of the legislation branch of the ministry, and want to acknowledge and thank Leah for her words of wisdom and her ongoing support of the college's social workers. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them, although I'm sure John wants me to move it right along. Any questions or comments for the board? Hearing none. Great. The next report is John, the registrar. John, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks so much, Curtis. And again, welcome to everybody. My name is John Mayer, and I am just completing my 5th year as registrar with the board of the college and for the college. And have to tell you that every year is just as exciting as the one that's been passed. 2015 was not much different than any of the other years in that we were really tremendously busy. And where there's lots of administrative stuff, the processing of applications, processing of renewals, the CPD program, there's a couple things that really stand out from 2015. It was the third year of our public awareness campaign. Now, as a regulatory body, we focus on the Social Workers Act, and the Act requires us to act in the public interest, which is somewhat different than the association. The professional association, the BC Association of Social Work, that's the body that advocates for you as a profession and for social work. By law, we have to act in the public interest. So the board a number of years ago crafted this public awareness campaign that treaded that line between raising awareness of social work as a regulated profession and at the same time really trying to build support for the profession. Going into 2015, given that we were implementing the licensing exam in September, we changed the focus of our campaign so that we were really trying to make people aware, people who would otherwise qualify for registration, but for some reason have chosen not to. They may work in an exempt role, they may not be in social work at all. But we really felt that it was our duty to make sure they were aware that if they registered before the deadline, they didn't have to take the exam. After the deadline of September 1st, anybody making an application does have to take the exam. So prior to September 1st, I think we had something like 800 additional applications. Lots and lots of people coming in saying, I'll do anything so long as I don't have to take an exam, which of course made for a really busy time right up until September when the applications literally just dropped off. There was like nothing in the month of September, which was, and I'm sure the staff will support me on this, it was good. It gave us a bit of a breather before we moved into really the reporting of continuing professional development. I'm going to jump on my slides down to the exam implementation, and that was another long-term project and long-term goal of the board. The requirement for an exam has been in the bylaws, as far as I can tell, from the late 1990s. So after a number of years of consulting and working and talking and having dialogue, the date of September 1st, 2015 was chosen for implementation. And, again, not surprising, though, everybody got in before it. So the uptake on the exam was a little slow afterwards. By the end of the year, I believe we had about 25 people who'd done the exam. And the statistics are actually really interesting because we had, for Canadian graduates, a 100% pass rate. There were a number of applicants who were unsuccessful, and none of those people had education that came from a Canadian university. And we'll report more again when we do this same meeting next year, but indications have continued along that same line that the minimum competencies that the exam covered appear to be very completely covered within the education system in Canada, which is a really positive aspect. My final topic is the Standards of Practice Revision Project. I'm actually surprised that I haven't gotten hate emails about the number of emails we've been sending out, because over the last number of weeks we've actually done quite a few of them. One of them was the Standards Revision Project. For anybody who's read our Standards of Practice and sort of made your way through the multiple footnotes, you'll recognize that those standards were originally done by the college in Ontario, and they were done quite some time ago. So 2 years ago, we initiated a process to redo our standards, and we really looked at sweeping the table clear, not just revising what we had, but looking at standards of practice for social work practice right around the world. And we picked some of the best models, looking at New South Wales, New Zealand, Ireland, United States, and we've come forward with a consultation and a dialogue which we really hope will involve all of you and all of your peers. So one of those emails that we sent out was an invitation to take part in a survey on some of the first steps of the standards revision project. And I was absolutely thrilled when we had 800 people respond, and out of the 800, we had over 600 usable responses. Now, if you remember the survey, there were lots of text-based questions. And for anybody who's done quantitative research, you know that you don't want to ask a lot of text-based questions in surveys where you get 600 responses, because now we have a lot of really, really good information to go through, but it's going to take some time for us to get through it. Finally, as Curtis mentioned, we have a lot of new staff, and I would just like to say thank you to all the staff at the college, both those that are no longer with us, but in particular the people that are in the room and the current staff, because they are just a tremendous asset to the social work profession and the College of Social Workers in BC. So on that, I will take any questions. I'm going to assume there's no questions online. Oh, question.
I have a question. You said there were 25 exam takers that they passed, 100% pass rate for accredited social work programs. How many were at the undergraduate level?
So the question was related to the exam and the numbers that took the exam, and how many were bachelor level and how many were master's levels. The majority were bachelor level. There were very few at that point who were graduate educated that had taken the exam. And by very few, I mean 2 or 3. Yeah.
Thanks, John, for your report. I was just curious about the public awareness campaign, and I also want to commend the college for that. I was really impressed by particularly the social media aspect. I think that was getting the information out there, and year to year, I could see that became more effective. So just a curiosity, where do we go from here? Is there continuing investment in public awareness campaign and other ways to raise the profile of the work that social workers are doing?
Yes, there's a real skill and talent to doing not only good public awareness, but good public awareness that uses social media. The board earlier this year at its January meeting agreed to continue with the public awareness campaign. We will be going and doing research to determine the effectiveness of the campaign. That will happen somewhere in likely September, October. Those dates aren't really fixed yet. We've, as a college, have budgeted about $200,000 a year over the last number of years. And, it's a significant amount of money. Until you talk to people that do public awareness and advertising, to run an effective television advertising campaign, you need to invest $1 million a year. The group that we work with, Bridge Communications, has actually been very effective in obtaining complimentary time, especially on TV. We did do closed captioning support, and I think we paid for 3 months and actually received 4 months of additional time based on that contract. So it is something that we're continuing. We do have an ongoing dialogue and discussion around social media is great, but it's great for a certain percentage of the population. Those who have a high-speed internet, those who have smartphones, those are the people that really use social media. We also need to be aware that we do service the entire province and many of the rural areas where there simply isn't the luxury of high-speed internet. So we're trying to work with Bridge Communications to craft campaigns. We do still do print campaigns, dedicated campaigns in different Aboriginal media as well. So we will be continuing and really trying to deepen that understanding. with no other questions, we'll move on to Doris for the Finance Committee.
Hi, everyone. And actually, just like Curtis, I'm doing really the last chair's report because our finance committee is new this year as well. So, but the auditors finished their work, and we got a good report on our finances and stuff. And this is the short version for you to have a quick look at. And if you're wondering why in 2014 it says minus 33,000, this is actually the public campaign that we launched, and we have quite a bit of retained earnings, and that's where that one fits in. So, any further questions? Anything? Okay, I guess. Thank you.
The annual report, including all the audited financial statements, are online, so by all means, go and take a look through. If you do have any questions about anything, we're always available by email, and we'll certainly respond.
Thank you, Doris. Emma Gauvin is the chair of the Quality Assurance and will provide the report for 2015.
Hello. I'm also presenting for the former chair. Josh Myers was the chair for 2015. And so John has given you a pretty good update of the work of the Quality Assurance Committee already. The two projects that the Quality Assurance Committee works closely on with the staff on is the Standards Revision Project and the Continuing Professional Development Program. So in 2015, the Standards Revision Project, we had a, what are we calling it, a reference group made up of different social workers from around the province who consulted with the staff and did a day-long workshop going through the standards and seeing how they might apply to their particular work settings. And so that has been really helpful and informed the survey that you all just received 2-3 weeks ago. And so that project will continue through this year. And 2015 was the second year for the Continuing Professional Development Program. And it was really helpful to have lots of feedback from people in the first year, which really informed how the program went in the second year. And I think, as has been mentioned, I think it went quite smoothly in the second year. I think registration, the number of registrants in 2015 increased by 19%. So it was lots of people doing the CPD program for the first time. So there was lots of questions for the staff and for the Quality Assurance Committee. But overall, I think there was 95% of people, of registrants, had completed the CPD program by November 15th. So it's so far been a very successful program. And this year will be the third year, and at the end of this cycle, we'll do a review of the program and see how it's going. So that is my report. Are there any questions?
Are there certain examples you can give for not being good standing, just as a social worker? You're in good standing and you're thinking, is there something done or not done, or is it just a matter of someone didn't like the way you spoke, or it was like a personality conflict that you get, or is it something much deeper for the not good standing? Like what kind of things would put you not in the good standing?
Sure. So the question was, what is something that would put a registrant into not good standing? And I might need John's help for this, but I think, I mean, it's just a matter of not having paid your fees or not having completed the CPD cycle. And so that's been, I think, the biggest thing. And most people are very interested and engaged in the CPD program. It's just understanding the technology or not figuring out the deadlines or having some sort of personal crisis arise. And usually people are able to comply. And a lot of people have been considering going to non-practicing and then decide around the end of the CPD cycle just to move into non-practicing or to no longer be registered. But that's why there is some folks in that category.
And then relating to the CPD, I was talking to a social worker today at the hospital. Is it pretty much self-direct? Like, would you ever not accept a CPD submission? Do you feel like over the last few years that it's
So the question is how flexible is the CPD program, and is it related to your own interests? And yeah, the answer is it's very, very flexible. And there's lots of helpful documents on the college website that can help you figure out what's applicable and what's not applicable. But you can really tailor it to your own interests and to things that you're already doing. I know social workers are already really involved in continuing professional development activities on a regular basis, and so for the most part, it's very easy to complete. Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Emma. The next report is from the Registration Committee, and Jackie Stokes is the chair.
Thank you. Unlike the two previous committee reports, I actually was the chair last year as well. So I either have to pretend I have dissociative disorder and I'm not myself and not take responsibility for actions I did last year, or I can pontificate at length. So I'm going to decide on the latter. No, I'm just kidding. First of all, though, I would like to thank the committee that we worked with in 2015, which included Doris and Renee from the board, and Mira, who I saw here, and Amanda. I don't think I saw Amanda. Thank you very much for being registered members of the association, but not on the board, and helping us with the registration committee. And Mira and Amanda have stayed on for this year, and we've now got Susan Barr and Jim Campbell joining us for the Committee of Five, which is how it's stipulated in the legislation. And I'd also like to thank Selena. Thanks, Selena, for all your support to the committee, and to John as well as the registrar to the committee. Thank you. So for people who don't know, there's two major roles that the registration committee works with. We're only supposed to meet 4 times a year, so I think we've done pretty well. There's 3 areas of policy that we looked at over the course of last year that was related to registration. And then the second area is the reviews. So in terms of the policy, because the exam was being implemented, we had to look at that, and there was 2 major areas that we looked at. One was the accommodation for the exam, and we did look at the ASWB and their policies around accommodation for people who needed accommodation because of a disability, and that has now been passed by the board and is on the website if anybody needs accommodation. The other thing we looked at was the provisional bylaws that were always in the legislation, but they hadn't been completely fleshed out. So we had to completely look at those and make some decisions about them. And in doing that, we then rewrote the bylaws to flow in a better way with the other categories. So the provisional the provisional status is really there for people who have completed the application process. They've done the criminal record check, they have the degree, all those other kinds of things, but there's a period of time between the time that they've completed the application process and the time that they've chosen to write the exam. So they will be given provisional status. They will only be allowed to call themselves a provisional social worker, not a registered social worker. And one of the things we had to consider in developing that class and the amount of time somebody could spend in that class is the balance between employability that people want. Some organizations, particularly the health authorities, want full registered social workers, and of course the protection to the public when somebody wasn't registered but was still provisional. So if anybody wants more information than that, currently it's been passed by the board. I don't think it's actually available on the website, although we'd probably make it available to you if you were interested. And the reason it's not available on the website is because it now has to go to the minister for approval prior to going into legislation. So that was a big piece of work. The other area that we looked at in terms of policy was the whole area of transparency. How do we ensure that the policies that we're using to do anything in registration are available to you or to potential registrants? And so there has been a review of the policy in terms of appeals of registration. Not appeals, reviews of registration, and that will be on the website shortly, and we'll make sure that people who are refused registration have access to that if they want to have a review. The third piece of policy that we looked at in a great amount of detail and was very complex was the related degree policy. So you probably are well aware that our legislation provides for a related degree. People don't have to have a social work degree to be a registered social worker. There's a provision for a related degree. We have a very high threshold for what's considered to be a related degree. So the legislation talks about substantial equivalency. And at this point, it's really around academic equivalency. So we have areas that we believe that people get in their social work degrees. And if you have a related degree, you have to get the same academic components. So we have looked at that. The only other province that really has a policy that we can look at was Ontario. We've taken a long look at that. They are in the process of rewriting their related degree policy, so we're going to keep an eye on that. Although at this point, we are maintaining that high threshold and ensuring that it's academic qualifications. So that sort of sends me to the next part, our next major role in terms of the registration committee, which is the review of the registration decisions. So we had 6 reviews last year. All of them were reviews related to the related degree. And in all 6 cases, the registration committee upheld the decision of the registrar, and which meant that the people were not able to become registered social workers. So it's a very high threshold. It's a complex process to look at substantial equivalency, and one of those has been appealed. And then the last part, which we've got here, is the stats. So that's my report. Thank you for my pontification. Any questions? No? Clap and get off the stand. Okay.
Thank you, Jackie. That was a great summary. And you mentioned the confusion of reporting on last year. Well, last year I was the chair of inquiry for several years, but this year's chair, Deborah Jones, is going to give my report.
Thanks, Curtis. So I was on the committee last year as well, and I'm happy to say that actually it's pretty much stayed very much the same. So Neil and Shannon are the 2 registrants who remain on the committee this year. And Curtis was replaced by Chelsea Minhas, who is another board member, and Colleen, who is our public member, who happens to be a lawyer, has remained on the committee. So it's an interesting committee. As people probably know, under the Social Workers Act, the committee looks at complaints received regarding the conduct of registrants. And the process is that it would come to the registrar, and it eventually makes its way to the inquiry committee. But we have this wonderful help from Chelsea Coolidge, who is the Director of Professional Practice, and John, as a registrar, who really do a thorough investigation, and then they bring it to the inquiry committee. And that doesn't mean that it stops there, but it's really helpful to get a lot of background information from both parties. And it's all about, we really try to uphold the notion of administrative fairness. So we want it to be a very fair and transparent process for both the complainant and the registrant. And, you know, as most of us are registrants in this room, I mean, it's sort of scary to even think of someone making a complaint. But we also want to honor the fact that people do make complaints, and to look at both sides carefully. So Chelsea plays a major role in fact finding, and then we have discussions as a committee. One of our committee members was a former coroner. So I mean, there's a lot of investigative skill and interest. Excuse me, and then we sort of make a decision, and the decision could be that we take no further action because the conduct, based on the wording of our act, we're limited by the wording of our act. So based on, we would take no further take no further action based on the satisfactory, the behavior of the, I think it's satisfactory conduct of the registrant. or we could decide to make a consent order, so with the registrant, to look at some kind of strength-based remediation of maybe a skill that was a little bit weak in one area or whatnot. Or we could take it to a hearing, which is the third option. So our stats are currently, one was dismissed by the registrar. Often it's a jurisdictional issue that someone makes a complaint and we don't have any jurisdiction under our act. So whenever the registrar dismisses a complaint, he has to let the inquiry committee know, and he brings it to the inquiry committee anyway. So we, based on our own motion, have investigated 2. 11 are under investigation. 11 are closed, no action taken. 6 were received undergoing preliminary assessment, which would be Chelsea and John. Citation, none last year. No complaint resolutions for a total of 31. So understandably, the number of complaints will probably go up over time, or has been. I guess it will level off, but because there's been such a huge increase in the number of registrants. So it's the other way we get complaints is based on the Act. Employers are required to notify the college if there's some particularly egregious complaint or against a registrant. So we would be notified by the employer of that particular, so we would investigate that as well, depending on the circumstances. So I don't know if, one thing that may be of interest to you, and it's in the annual report, but case-by-case subject matter, which I guess Chelsea compiled for us, but it looks like if you're looking at a pie, 1/3 of the pie would be on boundary concerns, 1/3 would be on registrant conduct and behavior, and then the rest is sort of broken up almost equally, but things like record keeping, inappropriate report to MCFD, misconduct, advertising, sexual misconduct, conduct unbecoming, confidentiality. So a whole range of things. But I'd have to say, for the most part, registrants, I think, are doing a great job. Complainants, I think, have very legitimate complaints, and sometimes it's I think everybody feels heard, hopefully, in the process, and that it is a fair and transparent process for both parties, the complainant and the registrant. Does anybody have any questions? Yes. John would probably be the best one for that, but good question.
The question was, can you give an example of a matter that might not be under jurisdiction, a complaint from an exempt social worker, so somebody working in MCFD. We would get a call, there'd be a complaint, the social worker, and we don't have any authority under the law, they're exempt. We'll also get, complaints about a testimonial, not about a person's professional capacity, but very external, that's on a website somewhere. So we try to look to make sure that we can actually substantiate what the allegations are, and then I have authority to dismiss if we can't. But the exempt social workers probably are the greatest majority of the complaints that we can't substantiate. We have no authority.
Thanks, John. Any other questions?
Yes.
Hi.
That actually brings up a good question. Any movement on the behalf of MCFD of removing the exemptions for their staff? Because I think that's the single biggest sea change that needs to happen, and I know you guys have been chipping away at it. Yes. So any updates?
Good question. I'll leave that to John, but basically, I guess, Curtis, sorry. Yeah.
Well, it's an excellent question, and it's one that you're right, we've been chipping away at. As you know, we had success with removing the healthcare exemption, and we work with the ministry to look at and talk about exemptions, and certainly they continue to say that they're moving in the direction of removal of exemptions. But there are a number of exemptions, some of which include very few registrants, if any at all. So, for example, municipalities are exempt, and yet we suspect there are less than a handful of social workers directly employed by municipalities, given that the health authorities took over community health care many years ago. Social work academics are exempt, so that's a question that I pose to my students all the time. What do you think of that? So the ministry says yes, that they're moving in that direction, but I can't represent the ministry or speak to when they're planning to move in that direction, and perhaps newly enthusiastic board members will have great capacity to sway them. But it's an excellent question.
Thanks, Curtis. Anything else? Great, on that note. Did you do? Thank you.
So we now have three reports from our public member, Colleen Spear. She's going to give the report from the Discipline Committee, which last year was chaired by Bruce Halsor, who's left the board, by the Registration Appeals Committee, which I believe was also Bruce's committee. Yes, she's nodding. And Colleen is also going to report on one of the most important initiatives of the College of Social Workers towards developing a respectful relationship, which is, I'll let Colleen speak to it, but it is the college's, and in partnership with the BC Association of Social Workers, hi Diane, it is our response, collective response to the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you for joining us this evening. And I realize now, giving the last three reports tonight, I'm the only thing standing between you and the sushi. So I'm going to try and be quick. And in the complexity around this being on committees the year previously and reporting in future, et cetera, it's even weirder that I'm reporting on discipline because I am not on that committee and never have been. But in any event, it's good then to tell you that nothing actually happened last year on that committee, as there was no hearings and they did not have any citations issued in 2050. That's good. Any questions around discipline? Around the nothing? Thank you. That's the report for the Discipline Committee. In terms of the Registration Appeals Committee, I was on that committee last year, and thank you. There were 2 requests for reviews of decisions by the Registration Committee, and 1 was completed. In that matter, the decision of the Registration Committee was upheld, and the other matter wasn't decided until 2016, so that will be reflected in next year's report. But I can give you a little prequel and let you know that the decision of the Registration Committee was also upheld. But that doesn't mean don't come next year. Any questions about registration appeals? No? Then that is my report on registration appeals. The next, as Curtis said, the TDRR. Do you want to move to the next slide? This is a very important initiative that was started well before my time, but it's been implemented since my time. And what I'd like to say is that although the group only met twice last year, the initiative is well underway, and I can't say it more eloquently than the joint statement that's on our website, and that is up here on the board. And normally I hate reading things when people can read them well themselves, but I'm going to, just because it articulates so well what this initiative is about. So the joint statement from the BCCSW and ASWB says that the British Columbia Association of Social Workers and British Columbia College of Social Workers are pleased to announce their partnership in our commitment to reconciliation and decolonization of social work practice. We recognize that the profession of social work has an important role and responsibility in supporting the implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations. Our intention is respectful dialogue with Indigenous communities, exploring pathways to building our relationships and new ways of working together. BCASW and BCCSW will be moving forward with both joint and separate activities in accordance with our organizational mandates. So I can let you know that that's a powerful initiative, and it's one that we have hired a contractor to implement on our behalf. We're working with them through our special projects to develop the first in the community World Cafe style discussions to explore these pathways. And we did go through quite a hiring and interviewing process to determine who we were going to hire to do this on our behalf. And we feel quite proud of who we've chosen and feel that this will be a great initiative starting this year and continuing on, and we'll keep you abreast of the situation at the next AGM. Any questions around the Towards Developing Respectful Relationships?
Are you going to announce who the contract winner is?
Yep. Are we there? Yep. Okay, so the question was who was the contract awarded to, and it's Lori Wilson of Nashwito Creek Consultants. Any other questions?
Yes, it is. Sorry, my apologies.
He did it.
It should be BCASW.
Any other questions? Yes?
I'm wondering, in light of this statement, what will be linked with the development of the competencies and having knowledge of colonization, past and present, reflected in the core competencies of social work practice, because up until now it hasn't been included kind of in the exam and in the ASWB's survey around core competencies. Specific knowledge of colonization and social work's role in that hasn't been reflected.
Okay, good question. John?
Yes. That's an ongoing development item. As you know, ASWB is also doing their practice analysis at this point. I will admit I was disappointed in some of their questions because they didn't specifically set out or break out Canadian Aboriginal, Indigenous, Métis, although they did for American Indian. So we as Canadians and the BC College have some work to do with them in educating them that there's certain things they have to address in their practice analysis, and that is certainly one of them. In terms of the competencies, yeah, we're very aware and we'll be looking to embed in the competencies and the standards of practice specific issues around Aboriginal cultures, colonization, cultural awareness.
Thank you, John. Any other questions? Sushi time. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you to all the committee chairs for your excellent reports. Because of the way we report on 2015 and 2016, I would be remiss, greatly remiss, in not acknowledging the 2016 board, most of whom are here today. Deborah Jones is the vice chair this year. Doris Darvasey is the chair of finance, and with myself as the chair, we form the executive of the college. Jackie Stokes, as you know, remains chair of registration. Emma Govan, as you've learned, is now the chair of quality assurance. And we have three new board members. Chelsea Minnis, Chelsea's here. I can't see her right now. And Jenny Morgan is also a new board member. I can see Jenny back there. I want to wave out to the crowd. And we hope, and also Jim Campbell was a member of the Board of Registration previously, but was elected and is now a board member up from Prince George. I believe Jim is watching, probably in horror somewhere at home. Hi, Jim. And Susan Barr was re-elected to the college board. And we also still have Colleen Spear. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone. One thing I would point out is that the college board is expected to have 12 members, and I hope I read out 10 names, but we currently do have 2 public member vacancies, and so the way the system works is that the government appoints those people, but they actually do take our advice, and so I would put it out to any of the registrants that if you think you know of somebody who would be a great asset on the college board who is not a social worker, feel free to contact one of us at the college, and we can forward that name to the government. They have obviously full discretion as to who they appoint, but they have expressed an interest in hearing from us about those appointees. So the last item on our agenda is question and answer, and Colleen's already apprised you of the sushi, and I've apprised you of the cash bar. Beyond those two questions, I would very much like to hear from registrants. If you have comments, questions, yes.
So two things, one's not a question. One time I think you had attended one of my ethics classes, you were twice, keen on getting the registered social worker to take the test, so I'm happy that you finally got what you wanted, which I think is great.
So basically, I am responsible, and I've always said that. I say that to my students all the time.
And then two, especially primarily in healthcare, it's so, what is your take on becoming one day, acquiring a master's? Because as a bachelor's of social work, I kind of feel now I'm a bit of a ancient, commodity here.
Right.
And there's so much of a take towards masters, especially in healthcare. So what do you think the VATS can do?
So the question was related to the qualifications of social workers to work in healthcare, bachelor versus master. I clearly can't represent or speak on behalf of the health authorities or what their intentions are. I can tell you that from my 20 years of social work education and practicum placement of students that I've heard for those 20 years that health authorities would like master's degree students, but they have in droves hired my and other schools' BSW graduates. So I think they're clearly from the profession and the college's perspective, and I would say from most of the educators I know, that there's clearly a role for bachelor level trained social workers in healthcare and also for master's degree. As I say, I cannot speak to the future landscape of what healthcare authorities will do, but they continue to take our students on practicum and they continue to employ them afterward. So.
Why I was concerned is because I was Googling one time about acquiring a master's, and it was saying how a lot of the people with bachelors are not qualified. Really, the public isn't even qualified enough. And so do you think that it's, it just doesn't matter, it doesn't really matter, or it's more personal?
Again, I can only offer my experience, and the health authorities will have to sort that out in consort with. But it's a bit like we talk about the exemptions in the Act related to child welfare, and there are registrants and social workers who believe, well, the child welfare should be the domain exclusively of social work. But indeed, if there aren't enough social workers filling those jobs, then allied professions will come forward. And it's the same, it's the same in the healthcare system. I mean, you can say, I need an MSW qualified social worker up in northern British Columbia, and if you don't get one, then you might have to hire the BSW social worker and discover that, wow, they're pretty qualified. So, any other comments or questions for me or John or anyone else on the board?
Hi, I've just written the exam about a couple of months ago, and I just kind of wondered, in the future, are you going to be doing some sort of a qualitative or quantitative study as to how to prep for future registrants? Because having just written it, it is a bit overwhelming. Like, there's a lot of material to cover, and on your website there is like an outline, but so that it's more tailored to Canadian registrants and more BC related registrants. I was hoping that whether or not there's going to be ongoing preparation or help with preparation for future registrants.
It's a great question. I won't repeat it because you've spoken to the mic. Thank you. And you're still standing. You wrote the exam. I'm happy to hear that. The exam is not something that, in fact, the college controls. The exam is administered through Pearson View on behalf of the Association of Social Work Boards, which is the international organization that's the affiliation of all professional colleges of social work, 50 states and all Canadian provinces. So in terms of us educating or training on tailoring to a BC context, for example, my understanding is that that's not necessarily within our jurisdiction. But your general question about preparing for the exam is, and it's an important one, it's one that schools of social work are now, I believe, taking very, very seriously. And we have, as a college, visited every school of social work in the province who has invited us to talk about the exam, to talk about the competencies, to talk about how those competencies get played out through the education system. And the other thing that I would, and I have made this pitch to, we have really close to you, Diane Heath, the Executive Director of the BC Association of Social Workers. And the BC Association of Social Workers has offered in the past and continues to offer prep courses for those who'd like to write the clinical licensure exam. And my hope is that there might be a market there, that the BCASW would be interested and willing to work with us to fill. And so that's definitely something I would like to see. In terms of preparation books and that sort of thing, all I can say is that there is no, many students, trust me, I've traveled the province recently, have come up with, this is a question from the exam and I could never pass it. And I look at the question and go, I couldn't either. Because they're not actually questions from the exam. There are all kinds of people out there publishing books and this, that, and the other thing, saying, well, this is what you need to study to take this exam, when in fact, unless it's an ASWB approved resource, you cannot rely on any of those. Yes.
I wonder if I could just add something. Thanks, Curtis. Just regarding the exam. So
Yeah. Come to the mic, Deborah, please.
Thanks, Curtis. So just regarding the exam, so I've been involved with the exam program at ASWB for, I think, 11 years. I think I wrote the exam, the clinical exam, 11 years ago. Some of us had an opportunity to write it. Well, it was brought to BC, so a number of us took it. Wrote it, but I guess I just want to reassure the registrant who had the question before. ASWB really, they are responsible for the exam, but they really want it to be a North American exam, not a U.S. exam, not a Canadian exam, but a North American exam. And they work very, very hard. So I've been writing questions for the clinical exam for a number of years, but I've also played different roles. So as a member of the clinical exam committee, and there's an exam committee for bachelor's level, master's level, and clinical, and another level. But anyway, they don't write that. They don't use that exam much. But in any event, the whole point of having Canadians, and there's always a Canadian on every exam committee, is to ensure that the content is really relevant. It's generic to North America. It's generic to good social work practice. And it's not related to, it's not U.S.-centric. And so there's that process. They're always encouraging Canadian registrants to apply to become writers. And there's money that you can make as a writer. And it's a great process. But also there's another level of checks and balances to ensure that the exams really are generic for North America. And that is, as a form reviewer, so I have been a form reviewer in the past, which means that just before the exam goes live, whether it's a bachelor, master's, or clinical exam, they have Canadians go through everything line by line, question by question, to make sure that it is really appropriate for Canada. So I guess I just wanted to sort of put that plug in to reassure people. And in terms of prepping for any exam level, whether it's bachelor's level, master's level, or clinical level, ASWB has a website that will then direct you to all sorts of information, and seeing how they are the exam developers, it's probably a good place to visit the Association of Social Work Boards website for the exam. And that would be it. Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. And Deborah is our in-house expert on the ASWB exams. And I think it's a really important point that you make. In terms of regionalizing an exam, there's no Louisiana-specific content, nor will there be any BC-specific content. And there is an upside to that, and that is that if you pass the exam, you are eligible to practice as long as you meet those other requirements in any of those other jurisdictions, 50 states and all Canadian provinces. So that is an important consideration. And there are in BC a number of item writers currently. And you're right, it's a great pitch to any registrant who wants to become an item writer to get involved and contact the college, and we can put you in touch with the ASWB. But thanks for that. Anything else? Any last thoughts? Final concluding moments? No? Hearing none. I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you. And you are? Mira David. Thank you very much. And please join us for refreshments and conversation. I think we have the room at least until 7, John. Correct?